The designers clearly haven't made any attempt at trying to hide the size of it. It is a bloody big thing. So you're paying a premium purely for the badge that's bolted to the car. That's
It's almost like, mechanically speaking, the design brief was, let's make everything the most complicated version of whatever it is we possibly can, locate it in the absolute most inaccessible place we possibly could, and jam it into a car where it barely fits. And then make all of the parts out of plastic and make them eye-wateringly expensive to buy.
It doesn't feel like it's accelerating. It feels like it's taking the Earth and just changing its rotation. Okay, we're guessing that you're thinking one of two different things. It's either, an Audi SQ7 is just bloody stupid. The world doesn't need a performance variant of a 2.5-ton SUV. This is everything wrong with the automotive industry. Or you're thinking, the Audi SQ7 is everything I need in one car. Luxury, practicality, a huge range of equipment and safety features, and it's quick enough to put a smile on my face every time I flex my right foot. And this is why performance SUVs are such a polarizing category of car. However, on top of trying to work out if a performance SUV makes sense to you or not, it's also really important to find out how these are aging, work out what they're going to cost you, and also find out what could potentially go wrong with them. But before we get into all of that, it's really important to know that we've actually already made a full Q7 review video, and because the SQ7 is based on the Q7, many of the common issues with the Q7 also relate to the SQ7, although there are some specific SQ7 issues that we are going to be running through. But first of all, with the exterior, a few owners of early pre-update cars had an issue where the doors wouldn't close properly, they just bounced back. Chances are this has been fixed under warranty by now, but just when you're looking at one, close the doors softly and make sure they close. Also, make sure that the fuel filler cap opens and closes properly as well, because a few owners have had issues with this failing. Apparently, a few owners of early pre-update examples have had an issue where the powered tailgate can have some problems. Basically, it will close okay, but then it won't reopen, just gets stuck. Also, just on the whole pre and post update thing, these have received a refresh for 2024, but the mid-cycle update, it was so much more than just a few aesthetic changes. The mechanical package was overhauled, the interior design changed, tech and features were substantially updated. However, as you'll soon see, some of these changes weren't for the better. Now, this next common complaint is something that we just see time and time again across the entire Volkswagen and Audi range. So yes, it does affect the SQ7 and the Q7. It's issues with water leaks. Now, the problem here is that the drainage channels or the drainage holes can get blocked over time. Potentially an even bigger issue is that because the grommets and the drainage tubes, even the little brackets that hold the tubes in place, they're all made of plastic and rubber, they can become brittle over time and break when you're trying to clean them. And this can be an absolute nightmare. Now, this is most concerning around the drainage channels around the panoramic roof, because if they get blocked or water builds up, it can impact the actual mechanism of the roof or even the electronics within inside the car, and trust me, you don't want this to happen. Just please make sure that the sunroof has been serviced regularly and all the lubrication is up to scratch. And if that's the case, then hopefully you won't have an issue. Hopefully. Also, just on the subject of electrical issues, just make sure that everything on the exterior of the car that is powered by electricity actually works. Chances are it will, but quite a few owners have had issues where sometimes they don't. Now, next up, quite a few owners have had issues where the windscreen wiper linkages can become detached. The problem here is that they've reported Audi dealerships will often try to charge them a ridiculous amount of money to fix this, sometimes over $1,000 for the parts and the labour to fix it. Now, the hot tip here is to join the owners groups and forums, because there are plenty of tutorials on how to fix this yourself. It's actually a really good little DIY project. One of the tutorials actually recommends using a rubber band. It's interesting, but it kind of works for a little bit. Now, if you're after a long-term fix for this, and obviously you should be, owners recommend checking out aftermarket parts, not the Audi OEM stuff, because they report that not only will you save a bunch of money on them, they're often better quality and they last longer. And then we come to the issues that are a bit more SQ7 specific. Like, for example, it's great that these things come standard with LED headlights, as long as they continue to work, because plenty of owners have had issues with them, like condensation building up inside. But the problem with this is getting the headlight out to replace it or repair it is an absolute nightmare of a job. Also, if you're tempted to buy an SQ7 that is fitted with the Matrix LED with laser headlights, yeah, they're impressive when they work, which sometimes they won't. And also, if you have to replace them because they're damaged or they don't work anymore, you could be up for in excess of $4,000 per headlight to replace it. And that's just for a used refurbished headlight. If you want a genuine new OEM one, you could be up for in excess of $10,000 per headlight. And next up we come to something that all SQ7s are fitted with, which is the excellent air suspension. This thing is so good because it's super comfortable when you're driving around shopping centres. You can lift the ride height to get over any speed humps at your kid's private school. And then when you want to actually have a bit of a punt, the car handles really nicely, especially for a 2.5 tonne SUV. But the problem with the air suspension is that plenty of owners have reported a whole host of issues. We're talking the airbags splitting or leaking, the compressors or the electronics failing, obviously all of which can be extremely expensive to replace. Also, it is a 2.5 tonne SUV that is bloody quick, so it's going to have quite the appetite for premium performance tyres, not to mention suspension components like bushes and even the brakes. But again, the hot tip here is to do your homework and look at aftermarket parts, because there's a very high chance you could find better quality, better performing parts while saving yourself a small fortune. Actually, to do this, we'd highly recommend doing what we have done with our personal cars and check out our mates at Automotive Superstore, because they've got over 400,000 different parts to choose from. Also, to make this whole process even easier, all you've got to do is just type in your rego details and the website will display all of the specific parts for your car. And best of all, because they deliver Australia-wide, you can order these parts from the comfort of your lounge room. So no matter if it's an SQ7 or Hilux or an i30N, or even if you just need a gift for a friend, Automotive Superstore will have you covered. Now, fun fact for you, did you know that the SQ7 shares the very same platform with the hideous Bentley Bentayga, the less unattractive Lamborghini Urus, the common as a Corolla Porsche Cayenne, and the Volkswagen Touareg? Also, you'll find this twin-turbo diesel V8, or a version of it, in the Bentayga, the Touareg, and even the Audi A8. Not to mention the 4-litre twin-turbo petrol V8 powering the post-update SQ7 is very closely related to the one powering the Lamborghini Urus, the Bentley Continental, Audi RS models, and the various Porsche Cayenne turbos. Also, while Audi's marketing department have worked really hard to sell you on the whole premium image of these things, or maybe if you're falling for the charms of German manufacturing, it is important to know that these aren't actually made in Germany, these are made in Slovakia. Obviously nothing wrong with that at all, but it's just good to know that your Slovakian-born SUV is yet another member of the Volkswagen parts sharing incest club. Anyway, look, while it might not be pure Audi underneath the sheet metal, who cares? Because honestly, it still looks the business. Also, hot tip here as well, if you're in the market and you're trying to decipher between a pre or a post-update has a little kink to the lower line of the headlight. Pre-update, it doesn't. But no matter if it's a pre or a post facelift, I tell you what, the designers clearly haven't made any attempt at trying to hide the size of it. It is a bloody big thing. In saying that though, I do tend to think that a lot of the people that are in the market for these things, I think they do like the fact that it is a big brute of a vehicle. Also, got to give a massive shout out to all of the S design highlights. It makes this thing such an attractive car, especially this wheel design. I've always found these so tasty. Although something that might be harder to swallow is just the levels of depreciation these things can suffer from. Brand new here in Australia, and obviously depending on the year model and the options fitted, pricing ranged from about $155,000 to $175,000. These days, the used market kicks off from around about $45,000. That means potentially worst case scenario, if you bought one of these brand new in 2017, you may have lost over $115,000 to depreciation. That's over $15,000 a year. Even when it comes to the post-update examples, let's take a model year 2022 car. They were asking about $165,000. These days, you can get one for about $120,000. That's potentially a $45,000 loss to depreciation in just 2 years. And obviously, we are talking about SQ7s that have a higher than average amount of kilometres on them, and they're potentially in, let's say, interesting condition. But even then, on the used market, this is potentially offering so much SUV for the money. Although we haven't spoken about the price of consumables or maintenance or service costs or repair costs or any of those things. So while these might seem like a bargain, just be aware that if you buy one, you're probably going to be dipping into your wallet pretty regularly. Now, when it comes to what can go wrong inside, look, honestly, it's pretty much the same as the regular Q7. Plenty of owners have reported just a host of electronic gremlins. From the climate control playing up to the door modules failing, which actually kill all the controls for that door, including some of the safety systems, the screens failing to rise up out of the dash in the pre-update cars, through to certain buttons or functions failing to respond, like the seat adjusters, lighting functions, and just the switchgear in general. Basically, try every single function in here and then maybe try it again just to make sure it all actually works. Now next up, look, it's great that these come with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but a stack of owners have had issues where the entire system can just completely lock up, or maybe it reboots itself, but when it does that, you then have to repair your phone, and that can just be a pain in the ass. Also, don't assume that the post-2020 update fixes all of these issues. Plus, because there are no physical buttons, especially for the climate control, plenty of owners have just complained about how they are to use. It's great that they've got haptic feedback, but the other problem here is because they're just big screens, yeah, they look great in pictures and on the internet when they're clean, but after about 45 seconds, it's just going to be covered in fingerprints. It's going to look like a crime scene after a forensic investigation. Now, the sort of good news here is that owners have reported that software updates can fix these issues, not the cleaning the screens issue, but then the problem is that even when they've done the software update, the problems can just come back again a couple of weeks later. But if it's a hardware issue, not a software issue, this can be a massive pain in the ass because a lot of these systems have to be coded into the car's various modules and computers, of which there are dozens in here. Plus, some of these things have a thing called component protection, which means you've got to go to an Audi dealership to have it fixed. But then the issue with this is that plenty of owners have reported that their local Audi dealerships attempt to charge exorbitant fees to fix these issues. Now, this is incredibly disappointing because remember, so many of these components are just standard Volkswagen parts. In fact, some owners have even tested their local dealerships with this. They've called up and requested a quote for what they say is a Volkswagen, even though they own an Audi, and they've found that the hourly rate and what the dealership will charge for the parts is substantially cheaper than if it was for an Audi. Yet we're talking pretty much the same parts, the same people working on it, so you're paying a premium purely for the badge that's bolted to the car. That's bullshit. Also, and as we said in the Q7 video, if you notice anything in here going even slightly wrong, get onto it ASAP, because there are so many reports that one little discrepancy can lead to another problem, and what was initially a pretty cheap and easy fix can become a thousands of dollars repair in no time. Now look, we know all of this can give the impression that an SQ7 is just a dodgy bag of bolts waiting to fall apart at any moment, but that is simply not the case. When we trawl through the various owners groups and forums, the overwhelming response you can see on there is that most owners adore the SQ7 and have had no problems. Even this very vehicle, this thing is used as a hire car all the time. It's ferried hundreds, if not thousands of people all around New South Wales, and the owner has had no dramas whatsoever. It's a fault-free experience. Actually, just on this, a massive thank you to all of the owners that assisted us with the research for this video. Couldn't have done it without you. And a massive, massive thank you to Highland Chauffeured Hire Cars for lending us this SQ7. You guys are legends. But another negative that I personally have with this interior has been trying to find a time-efficient way to explain to you all of the features and equipment this thing comes with. See, being the flagship of the Q7 range, it comes with every conceivable bell and whistle. We're talking automatic parking, we're talking a 3D surround sound system, we're talking 4-zone climate control. Honestly, you name it, if you want it, you're probably going to get it in one of these. And not only that, here in Australia, we received a couple of special edition models, so they come with even more standard kit. Plus, being an Audi, the range of optional extras is just immense to say the least. Even in terms of the levels of safety equipment, look, unless you're going to get in a fight with a tank, chances are everybody inside this thing is going to be safe and sound for the foreseeable future. Look, the best bet if you do need to know all of the specifics is jump on ReDriven.com and check out the free SQ7 cheat sheet. We also list out all the car's common issues there, so they're really easy to refer to. The link's down below. But look, aside from the common issues and what stuff you're going to get, what are these interiors like to live with? Well, from a design perspective, typical for Audi here, it is utterly beautiful. This is peak interior car design for me. Although, as I just alluded to before, don't be fooled by the post-update. Yes, it looks fantastic in the pictures, but in real life, it's an absolute nightmare to live with. It's this one for the win. In terms of ergonomics, again, typical for Audi, absolute perfection. There's so much adjustability. It's just so comfortable. The seats are near perfect. They're supportive, yet they're comfortable. It's just a bloody wonderful place to be. But in terms of practicality, it's maybe a little bit disappointing. For a car of this size, it hasn't got a lot of storage and cubby holes. Here we go. You've got a spot here to collect dust and filth and a little power outlet. You've got a couple of cup holders and a spot specifically designed for the key there. You've got more storage for your phone just here or to collect filth. You've got cubby hole under here, and these slide back and forth, which is good. Okay sized door bins, but there's nothing under there. There's nothing under the seats. There's no sunglasses holder. Like, when you look at the sheer size of this interior, I just feel like there should be more cubby holes and storage down here, something under the seats. It's okay. Oh, also, when it comes to actually using the tech in this, Audi's MMI system for me is pretty good. It's maybe not as instantly intuitive compared to, say, BMW's iDrive, but once you get used to it, it's fine most of the time. Although when it comes to using some of the other functions, and this isn't just the SQ7, this goes for a whole bunch of other cars, let's say the windscreen wipers, a lot of owners are annoyed at the exorbitant prices that some manufacturers try to charge them for OEM windscreen wiper blades. Luckily, WiperTech can fix this. Simply hit the WiperTech link below, because that way you can order your wiper blades easily online. They're going to fit your car perfectly. Actually fitting them is an absolute breeze, and they work so incredibly well that we genuinely use them on all of our cars. Plus, that link is going to get you 15% off and free express shipping. Then in the second row of the SQ7, I'm exactly 18 centimeters taller than S Club 7 member John Lee. This is in my driving position. Cop the amount of space back here. Loads of leg and foot room. You can adjust the seats forward and aft, and you can also adjust the angle. Super, super comfortable. The seats are a little bit on the firm side, just a smidge, but this is a bloody lovely place to be. Then in terms of practicality and features in the second row, you've got your own air vents with your own climate control, 2 power outlets, got some netting here in case you go fishing, you need to store your fish somewhere, decent sized door bins that are easy to get to when you've got legs and the door is shut, little cubby hole here which looks a little bit like a cigarette lighter, but we're going to ignore that. More air vents there, and obviously pull down armrest, yes, pull down armrest with flippy uppy cup holders. And then in the third row, first of all, getting in and out can be a little bit of a faff, but once you're in here, yeah, it's cozy. It's a little bit dark, but the seats are comfortable. I'm surprised at how much leg room I've got, but as long as you're kind of like sitting in the fetal position, it's quite nice. And as far as features and practicality in the third row, you've got a couple of cup holders either side, and that's about it. And then as far as practicality in the boot goes, even with the third row up, it's actually not too bad back here. It's one of the better 7-seat SUVs for space. But then with the third row down, massive boot area. Also, obviously, with the second row down, it basically becomes like a small van. Although, as practical as this is, it's not the class leader for sheer space. That honour goes to the Nissan Patrol. But what goes wrong in terms of the driving experience? Well, the first big problem is that this thing is so utterly wonderful to drive. You're quickly going to forget about all of the common issues that they can suffer from. Seriously, even if you don't get the whole performance SUV thing, a few minutes behind the wheel of this thing, and I would struggle to understand how you wouldn't be massively impressed. Like, it does all of the premium SUV stuff that you'd expect. It's quiet and refined and just ultra comfortable no matter what the road surface. Even in terms of handling, remember, this is a 2.5 ton SUV, but when you have a bit of fun through the corners, it somehow feels easily 1,000 kilos lighter. But then sink that right foot in. Thanks to a little electric motor giving the turbos a bit of a helping hand, there is hardly any lag, and it hauls so hard. In fact, it doesn't feel like, oh Jesus, it doesn't feel like it's accelerating. It feels like it's taking the earth and just changing its rotation. But there are a couple of negatives. The steering, typical for Volkswagen and Audi, it's just, like, I know you're not expecting feel and nuance in an SUV, but it feels so vague. It's like a PlayStation gaming console wheel from about 10 years ago. Also, while it feels lighter than it is, you're very, very aware that it takes up a lot of actual physical real estate. When you start driving down small back streets or even suburban streets, say in Sydney, it just feels like you're driving a tank. Also, quite a few owners have complained about some of the active or autonomous safety technology just being calibrated far too aggressively, or just it's far too sensitive. Also, if you're looking at buying a post-update example and you're intending to drive your performance SUV in the way that it was engineered, you might want to take a second mortgage out, because the fuel expenses can be quite concerning. Audi's claimed fuel consumption figure is 11.8 litres per 100 Ks, but many owners are reporting that they're seeing figures far closer to 20. But if fuel consumption is a big concern, stick with one of the pre-update diesels, because this one, even with the amount of driving it does, it's getting 9.5 litres per 100 Ks. And then obviously the biggest concern when it comes to the driving experience, what mechanically can go wrong with it? Well, unfortunately, I can't tell you, because I'm not a qualified mechanic. But you know who is? It's Jim.
Now, overall, these engines typically aren't described as unreliable, but there is plenty of things that do go wrong. Now, we can't categorically say they've engineered obsolescence here. But when you hear what I'm about to say and the amount of plastic parts and the way it's designed, look, I've got a feeling these engineers didn't expect these engines to be around in 10 years' time. Now let's start with the petrol here. The most common cause of ignition misfires are the ignition coils, or in other cases, vacuum leaks. Now I'll get to the vacuum leaks later. These engines are a hot V. That means the turbos and the exhaust manifolds are on the top side of the engine in the V. Now that comes with its own set of complications, mostly relating to heat, really. Every fitting in there, every coolant fitting, basically everything in that area, it just gets fried and often causes problems. Now the turbos themselves, they can be prone to failure, fairly common issue really. The problem here is the oil supply line has a oil screen in it, like a gauze screen, ironically meant to protect the turbos. But what happens, it blocks up and starves the turbo of oil and then kills the turbo. Those screens are not really accessible. You can, there is an aftermarket arrangement where you can remotely mount the filters and make them more serviceable. Some choose to take those screens out altogether, which works fine as well. And I should also add, there is a whole bunch of Audi recalls relating to these screens where they fix it for free. So look into that if you have one. The air oil separator, or the breather system, or the PCV system, whatever you want to call it, is very complicated on these engines. It is very much prone to leaks because a whole bunch of it is made of plastic. And when they leak, you get a whole bunch of air-fuel ratio fault codes, and sometimes you get misfires as well from vacuum leaks. And speaking of leaks, that takes me to the cooling system, where there are plenty of weaknesses there too. The thermostat and thermostat housing are prone to leak, and pretty much every plastic hose and fitting, after a few years, they become brittle, and you know, there's a lot of potential leaks here. The water pump itself is also prone to leak. Now that's actually almost impossible to get at. About a 4 or 5 hour job just to change that water pump. Enough of coolant leaks now, let's talk about oil leaks. Plenty to talk about here as well. The oil filter housing can leak, the valve covers can leak, the timing cover, it often leaks too, and the valley cover down inside that valley also leaks as well. Injector failure on these, I wouldn't call it a common issue, but it can happen. Also, you can have complications with the high pressure fuel pump setup as well. The timing chains on these, not what you'd call a common problem, but when something does go wrong, either with the timing chains, the tensioners, the cam phasers, or any of the valve train associated with that, it can be ugly and very expensive. For example, there are 4 separate chains. Now each of those chains has its own tensioner and guide system. Now if these vehicles have been neglected or have high mileage, chances are sooner or later you are going to have timing chain issues. Now if you're lucky, you'll hear a rattle happening there. That can tell you something's on its way out. But if something does fail, the engine, the subframe, the transmission, everything has to be dropped down out of the vehicle to gain access. Now it is going to be expensive no matter what. Now onto the pre-update 4-litre diesel. Now surprisingly, there actually isn't a whole lot of reliability data out there on these, but it has comparatively fairly low sales volumes compared to the petrol. I can tell you that it is completely different than the 4.2 litre diesel in the earlier generations, and it is way more complicated. The 48 volt mild hybrid setup in these, it's basically just an electric motor driving a small turbo. It's more like a supercharger really. That's just in line with the other turbo pipes. And by reports really does absolutely bugger all, and my personal opinion is that it's really only there so they can actually market this vehicle as a hybrid. So really, it's unnecessarily complicated and basically a waste of time. And if it should fail, it will cost a fortune to replace. This engine is also a hot V, so there's a lot of concentrated heat up in that V, which nearly always causes issues down the track. In that hot V, there's a whole bunch of pipes and plumbing related to the incredibly complex air oil separator system on these things. One of the most complex I've ever seen, to be honest with you. And I should add, it's primarily made of plastic. So heat, plastic, oil, yeah, you can imagine what that's going to be like in the long term. On the front of this engine, Audi has what they're describing is the coolant module. Now it's responsible for regulating the flow to a whole bunch of different components. Flow to the engine oil coolers, the engine itself, the interior heater, and the transmission. Now, it controls the flow to those all pretty much independently. It's very complicated. It's mostly made of plastic with a whole bunch of rotary valves and pneumatic actuators. And whilst now it's not known as a weak point, I will guarantee you, because it's all plastic and it's exposed to huge amounts of heat, later on it's going to be an absolute pain in the ass. The shaft-driven water pump, which is buried right down in that hot V is almost impossible to access as well, so you want to hope that lasts. The timing chains, no surprise here, they are at the back of the engine. The good news here is they're actually simplified from the old 4.2 diesel. Still incredibly complicated, but somewhat simplified from the older versions. And needless to say, if it's neglected or high mileage, it is going to be a problem and definitely expensive to fix. I should mention the active engine mounts as well. Very prone to failure. That's same goes for the petrol as well. Yeah, expensive too. Transmission in these, good news here, it's a ZF 8 HP. Now a lot of manufacturers use these. They are actually a fairly good transmission. Where a lot of manufacturers do not schedule oil changes, Audi actually do. They recommend every 60,000 Ks, which is good, but if you're towing or if you're launching and tracking one of these, which some people seem to like doing, you need to do that more frequently. I'd recommend every 30,000 Ks. I'd also recommend you use genuine ZF oil. The rest of the driveline, it's relatively good, but does require a lot of servicing. It's not cheap to do, but if you want these things to last, definitely change the fluids. Absolutely, at least every 60,000 Ks, or better still, every 30. In terms of suspension, these all have air suspension. Bunch of problems there as well. The struts themselves, the airbags can leak, the compressors can fail, the valving system can also glitch, and the height sensors often fail as well. Yeah, plenty of problems to go wrong there. Now these V8 engines, especially the diesel, are the most complicated domestic engines you can get. They've designed a lot to go in a very small space, which is in one way great engineering, but in other ways, when something goes wrong, it's just an absolute nightmare to fix. Basically, when these things are new, up to maybe 5 years old, or maybe even up to 100,000 kilometers, these things are actually great, and I love them, I really do. But I can guarantee you, after that time, they are going to be nothing but a headache. And a bloody expensive headache too.
But the question still remains, should you buy one? Well, before we answer that, what else could you buy instead? When talking premium 7-seat SUVs with some serious performance credentials, you have the Mercedes-Benz GL63 AMG, although the normal GL class that it's based on was easily one of the worst cars that we've ever reviewed. There's also the BMW X7 M50i, and if you're happy to sacrifice a little bit of firepower, you also have the Volvo XC90 T8. However, as wonderful as the SQ7 is to drive and be in and just look at, we're not really sure if it's actually worth the premium that you're going to pay over just a normal Q7. The build quality and potential issues are no better than the car it's based on. If you find a heavily optioned Q7, thanks to depreciation, you could save a few $1,000s and have just as many bells and whistles as the SQ7. Really, the only thing that a normal Q7 lacks is the monstrous performance. And on Aussie roads, with our seemingly telepathic highway patrol force and our very aggressive attitudes towards speeding and fines, really, how often are you going to use all of this extra performance? Plus, there's another V8 powered 7-seat SUV that also manages to avoid many of the concerns that come with this. Also, they retain their value incredibly well, unlike these. And they can do the thing that SUVs should do in the first place that the SQ7 really can't, and that's go properly off-road. It's one of these. But a question for you, if you weren't to buy this or this, what 7-seat SUV would you buy instead? Let us know in the comments. See you next time. Cost to own and live with, and just work out what actually goes wrong with them. That was completely wrong. It's an SUV thing, a few minutes behind the wheel of this, and I would struggle to